Super Bowl caliber defense, that's it. You make that last tackle
and then I can
right
think
there,
there were two plays,
know?
really, Jerry. Two plays there. The one was when Luck breaks through and he's scrambling to go in for the touchdown, and he confronts Christian Kirksey at the 5-yard line and just fakes him out of his
just
job.
Jukes him right out of his shoes.
Just juke him. You make that play and you force a field goal attempt if you're a Super Bowl caliber defense. The other play, the one you're talking about, where if there was some lift and some extra incentive for being a Buckeye, well, then why did Dante Whitner get faked out on that?
I hear you.
He was the guy on the other end of that, and I thought to myself, wow, that's really a weird play. The biggest play of the game right there, 4th and 1, and it turns out to be Buckeye versus Buckeye.
Yeah,
and then I thought about it afterwards, and I said, not only is it Buckeye versus Buckeye, it's because both kids out of Cleveland, Glenville High School, so and obviously both Buckeyes. But anyway, it was that was huge. The game turned on that one play, and you win or you lose based on it being able to make a tackle when it's right there in front of you.
Absolutely. And now, regardless of who the quarterback's going to be here this weekend, we'll see about that here relatively quickly. I don't think this is going to be a big old dramatic. I guarantee you, if there's a change, I think we hear it today. If there's not, regardless, I think we'll know. I don't think there's none of this waiting all week nonsense here, because I think Mike Pettin saw what that did last week. If we're moving and we're doing it now, we're getting this kid ready. And if we're not, and I don't think they are. I think if they were, we'd have heard it already. I think Mike Pettin made up his mind last week that I'm going to stick with Hoyer until we're eliminated, and at that point, I'll make the change. So I think in his mind, he doesn't even see any reason to comment on it right now, and unless anybody in the room jumps up and shakes him and says, no, man, we got to change things this week. And again, that just goes back to why that decision is so hard. Hey, I want to pause the conversation here. Stop talking about some football, because for the past 20 minutes, I've been going, man, we just started this football conversation. I want to break in with, well, it was breaking a few minutes ago. It's now broken news, but we talked about the Indians on Friday attempting to acquire Brandon Moss from Oakland. That deal goes official. As Dan and I were talking here on the show, the Indians have acquired 2014 All-Star Brandon Moss from the Oakland A's. They traded infield prospect Joey Wendell to get him. We talked about the glut of infield prospects that the Indians had to trade from. They were dealing from a position of strength, and I think we knew all offseason that would probably be where they'd make a move. We didn't know if it would be Ramirez, perhaps, if it would be Wendell, a lot of different names thrown in there. Moss, I'm going to throw it out there now. This is what you thought you were signing when you signed Nick Swisher, in my opinion. 31 years old. It's going to be a 4-year contract. I think $58 million or something was the number that I heard last year. He only hit .234, but he did have 25 home runs, 23 doubles, 81 RBIs. He had 67 walks and scored 70 runs. Overall, he is about a 248. Yeah, 248. I was going to say 250. He's a 248 hitter, 91 home runs, 298 RBIs in 625 games. The thing is, again, this is a guy that I think could be decent in the first 2 years of the contract. Hopefully in the back end of it, you're not regretting this one. But, man, that makes you wonder. First off, Dan, your thoughts on Brandon Moss, and where's the next shoe? You know it's coming, because clearly this is going to move either Swisher or Santana out of here, because you've got the log jam of guys that all do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you mentioned that Moss has had an off-season hip surgery. Am I right?
Yes, and that's the issue, and I think that's why the price was so low, because the Tribe's taking a risk here because of that, because how damaged are the goods? That's one thing that hasn't really been
And the other
talked
thing
about
is,
yet.
It also appears to be a salary dump by the A's as well. I mean, wouldn't that be fair to assume?
Well, yeah, he's got arbitration coming, and I believe he's going to be somewhere around. I thought I saw an estimate of about $7 million in arbitration is what is what he looks to get from arbitration here this year. So, but it's still, assuming you were moving, say Swisher, to me, I'm like, well, you're still paying half as much for the same production. But yeah, that is it, because they don't want to pay the big jump into arbitration here that's coming up for him.
Yeah, right. And Now, from your lips to God's ears, as far as Antonetti and Shapiro being able to, hoodwink somebody into taking Swisher off her hands. I really hope that is the eventuality. But it certainly does create a logjam at first base DH. And now Moss, I understand is not. I don't know if you want to go back to the kind of slow-footed outfielders. I don't know. They say Moss can play a little bit of outfield. I don't know how little. I really am not sure about that. Couldn't really render an opinion. But I wouldn't want to put a guy like that who's really a first baseman DH, put him out in right field. A lot of people speculated this might be the end of David Murphy as well for here.
I think so.
This, Cleveland
I
team.
think that's quite possible because this, again, you're looking at guys that all fit multiple roles, and you're starting to see some overlap here. Last year, the breakdown for Moss was 67 games played at first base, 56 in left, and 34 in right field for Oakland. So he actually played more than half of the games in the outfield last year, 67 at first base. So interesting.
Now,
I've heard Murphy, too.
I was just going to say, Joey Wendell, the other indication that this is a dump of a player that the A's didn't have any use for is that they got him for Joey Wendell.
Yes.
Joey Wendell, nice player, and I didn't know if he was, who was the name is escaping me right now, the second baseman that we had up here for a cup of coffee a year or so ago, out of Stanford, switch hitter, hit a game-winning home run, at one point with the Tribe, played second base. I don't know. Can you help me out? I'm losing the name.
I'm trying.
Oh man, he hit a left-handed game-winning home run for the Indians. At one point, he was I think he came out of the Pac-10. I believe he was out of Stanford.
Cord Phelps.
There you go, Cord Phelps. Exactly. Yeah. I see Joey Wendell as Cord Phelps. In terms of ceiling, heady player. Good, contact hitter, smart guy, versatile, plays a couple of positions maybe, but I think that's about it. And of course, with the Indians, he was blocked by Ramirez and also Kipnis, of course, at second base. He wasn't going to play second base for the Cleveland Indians anytime soon, if ever. So, to spin him up, people couldn't believe it when I first started seeing this trade talk speculated about early in the weekend. Tony Lastoria and other people that I admire and respect about Tribe minor league prospects, they couldn't believe that, there was almost jokingly at first, Joey Wendell for Brandon Moss. Like that couldn't happen because it wasn't enough for the A's. Well, it turned out to be enough for the A's. Now, maybe you there have a whole different evaluation of Joe Wendell than other people do, but to me it seemed like, let's get something out of this Moss thing and unload this obligation and the risk of him coming off the surgery.
And that's a big thing. You've got the hip surgery. They say he'll be back. He just had that surgery at the end of October there. Not only that, the defense. He is rated as a very subpar defender in the outfield, which Mike Brandenberry, and I'm sure he's going to be all over this when we talk later on in the week, pointed out how the Indians have got to go the opposite direction of that, how they got better the minute they're improving those spots. And so clearly that goes in the opposite direction there with adding more poor defense to the outfield. And so that's
true. Although I will say this, the Indians' defensive problems were not in the outfield.
Oh, no.
Last year, they made, you can count the outfield errors on one hand.
I agree. I agree.
Think last year. But yeah, it's the corner spots on the infield where they really needed the help, and they've already upgraded the middle infield by getting rid of his Drupal and bringing in Lindor or whomever plays that spot next year early in the season.
So that deal, which was talked about as being very likely, right away they start the winter meetings and boom, Indians make a move. We'll see what next, because I think that this is the beginning of a couple of dominoes that fall here once you get this first one in. That's going to be a lot of fun. I remember real quick, just as an aside, as a youngster, I used to love, and except I didn't know, you know how now everybody knows the dates for trade deadlines and for the winter meetings, and everybody's a sports expert. Even the most average fan now is a home general manager. I didn't know that stuff. I just knew that when you got around the beginning of December, it was getting close to Christmas, that all the baseball people got together and all kinds of cool trades happened, and that's when free agents were signed. And I'd always, as a kid and even as an early teens, I'd always look forward to this time of year because you knew that whatever the Indians may do, and then of course usually it would be something like they signed Keith Hernandez or something like that, but that was always the fun time. Yeah, exactly. And you know what I'm saying. So
it is a fun time of year for baseball, and the pieces are starting to come together, and the people are already counting down the days till the equipment truck leaves Cleveland. So
we got 70 days or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
I was reading. I told you guys I read it in one sitting when I read the Terry Pluto and Tom Hamilton's book. But I still right away, like first 25 pages of the book, he's telling a story about the 90 Indians, and Tom Hamilton's in spring training, and it's him and the PR guy and Herb Score, and they're sitting around a table talking about the potential for the Tribe season. And Tom Hamilton's like, I'm young, full of it, and we've got a rookie public relations guy, and we're looking at the lineup. And here's the lineup, by the way. It's Mitch Webster in center field, Jerry Brown, the governor, at second base, Candy Maldonado, Corey Snyder, Keith Hernandez before he played like 3 games. Chris James was the DH. There was a big bat in the middle of the lineup. Brooke Jacoby over at third. A very young Sandy Alomar at catcher. Rafael Santana at short. And the opening day starter was Buddy Black, of course, the future manager. And there he said, we were sitting there going on and on about this team and how they could compete for the playoffs and this and that and the other thing, and what a great young core. And after about 5 minutes, Herb couldn't take any more. He heard us just going on and said, stop it. They stink. This is not a good team at all. They're not going to contend for anything, not playoffs, not anything. This is a bad baseball team. What are you guys talking about? And he said we didn't even question it because we knew that if anybody had seen a truckload of bad baseball, it was Herb Score, and he could look at the lineup card and know whether this was going to be a good team or not. But just looking at those names, I can imagine, because that sounds familiar, because we sit around here and we go, yeah, man, they signed Mark Reynolds. What a great signing that was, or whatever, And then you look back in hindsight and go, man, they're just going to strike out 300 times. Why did we care that they signed Mark Reynolds,
Yeah, what were we thinking about? Rafael Santana and Jerry Brown up the middle.
Look at the governor, Jerry Brown, man. And, hey, I grew up with Corey Snyder in my outfield. I liked him. I thought Corey Snyder was going to be I thought he was the coolest guy. I'm not going to lie, because I was like 8 years old or something.
We all did. And you remember the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1996. Joe Carter and Corey Snyder. It was
86.
The thing that was going to carry the Indians to the World Series title. The Indian Uprising, I believe, was the
Indian Uprising
overused headline.
I thought, I'm telling you, it's just how you don't know when you're a kid, when you're a youngster, you don't know. I thought that Greg Swindell and Tom Candiotti were like the best 1-2 top of the rotation that you could have. They were just some stud pitchers, and again, like you said, Corey Snyder to me was the coolest. He was going to be the man in the outfield. He was going to be the young gun, and then you had Joe Carter.
He surprised everybody by flopping. He really did. I mean, you and I weren't deluding ourselves too badly. Everybody in the baseball world thought Corey Snyder was all that in a bag of chips.
And Brett Butler, I grew up with him. That was kind of my Indians as a child. I'd say I was really knew what I was like watching. Not even new. I don't mean new baseball. Just understood what I was watching. Would probably be, 84-ish through, obviously. Then you get into the 90s, and then I started knowing, actual baseball stuff. But yeah, so that, you could say maybe that's why I have such a soft spot for being able to tolerate mediocre baseball for so long before I get frustrated, because that's the era I grew up on,
J-Rick, I could tell you some stories. I mean, I was a child of the 50s, and, I was 7 years old in 59 when, a guy named Tito Francona almost won the batting title, hit 359,
Yes.
and talk about a guy you thought was the next big thing. That was his career year. Never had a year even close to that after that, Francona. And, but I grew up with, Dick Hauser, Mike Delahose, Fred Wingy Whitfield, Bubba Phillips, Larry Brown,